Coming to you live from WRUE in Tennessee. It's the Scribbling Woman.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, I'm Nancy Rue. I'm a scribbling woman, and so are you, and that's why we're having this conversation. Here, we talk about creating a writerly life that is unique to you, no matter what your age, your season, or where you are in your creative pursuits. You are now an official Scribblie, so let's talk. And speaking of talking, we have a guest today. So, Jim, will you do the honors?
Coming to you from the plains of Colorado, it's Abigail Geiger.
There you go. You have been officially introduced, Abigail, and welcome.
Thank you. That is a very unique introduction. I don't think I've ever had one like that.
Right? And he gets better all the time, too. So Abby is, of course, one of my favorite writers and also one of my favorite people. She is the author of the Ghost Walker saga, and that includes Spire and Stone, right? And Timber and Tomb. And there will be others that will be soon available, but those two you can find on Amazon. She's also the author of several other works. And really fun part, she is the ABBIE half of the Abby and Abby podcast, in which the two Abigails explore the publishing industry. And I personally feel that you have to be as brave as any of your characters, Abby, in order to explore that. So welcome. It's really good to have you here.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you are the perfect person, actually, to be sitting next to me today, because in this season of the podcast, we're talking about how to keep writing, or how to at least keep showing up with the intention of writing in these really disturbing times, both in society and in publishing. But you have been there, done that. You're still doing it. And so let's get a little bit of backstory. When did you first get that vision that you wanted to be a writer? What was your big picture dream?
Oh, goodness. Well, this story, it always has to begin with my mom, because there's a little bit of repentance here. For my mom always told me, you should be a writer. You should write books. You should write things. You should write stories. You're such a story person. And I always had that teenage, eye roll. No, Mom, you don't know. I could never do that.
Mothers know nothing when you're a teenager.
Yes. Now, whenever I'm asked, I have to be like, Mom, you were right.
Wow. I hope she watches this episode. Now it's official, right?
Yes, it's official. But I started seriously writing and taking it as a job about when I turned 18 and I graduated. And then I had this. I was cleaning somebody's house, and I remember scrubbing the floor. I think they were moving. And I remember kind of mulling over in my head, what were my goals as a writer, what I wanted out of this. And I remember telling myself, I want to be the best. I want to be absolutely amazing. I want to be the best that there is. And it was such a lofty goal for someone who had no experience. And that has always stuck with me of I want to continue learning no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. I want to continue building my skill set and continuing to learn no matter what.
And you have absolutely done that, because when I met you, you were probably about 22 and you were writing very seriously. Tell us what happened in your 20s as you committed yourself to this.
My 20s were very interesting. I got a lot of sideways looks from people who were kind of wondering, what are you doing? Why are you just sitting in your room on this computer? What are you doing with your life? I didn't go to college. I started. I was going to get an English degree and go into all that. And I had it all set up, and I prayed and I said, Lord, if this is the wrong thing, let the financial aid fall through. And I went to the first day, and I went through my first class, and then all of my financial aid fell through. And
Okay, that is like instant answer, right?
it was a very strong, this is not it. But
right?
I took
Exactly.
jobs. I was a nanny, and I wrote everything that I did revolved around how am I going to make myself a better writer? How am I going to give myself time to write? How am I going to make this dream a possibility?
And you were so committed even at such a young age, because when I met you, we did the Young Women Writers Retreats, and you were always so calm, so steadfast, so solid. And there was a lot of estrogen bubbling around. It was like a room full of confetti, and you were always the stabilizing influence. And somewhere in there, you also started doing some work for Focus on the Family. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. Back in 2019, I accepted an apprenticeship with Adventures in Odyssey. It is a radio drama for kids that has been going on for about 30 years. I grew up on it. So I remember being interviewed by two of the people on the show. And the HR person told me, okay, well, you're going to be interviewed by Dave Arnold and Nathan Hubler. And she might as well have said like Arnold Schwarzenegger and like, I don't know. It was so intimidating.
David Tennant or somebody, right?
This is my childhood hero, and they're going to be asking me questions. But I got that.
Pitter pat.
Yeah. I got that apprenticeship, and I think that the biggest thing that I learned in that apprenticeship was how much I really didn't know, and how far it really had to build up my skills to a professional level. But it was amazing. It was so exciting because any room that I walked into, no matter where I was in that process, everybody had something that they could teach me. Everybody had something that they could pass on. And it was incredible. It was the best learning opportunity I possibly could have gotten.
Oh, yeah, that's rich. Better than college.
Exactly. And so I went from being an apprentice to being a freelancer. I did that for 3 years with them. And then 2 years ago in December, I got word that they were looking at bringing me back on staff as a staff writer. And I went through that whole process, and I was so excited. And the day after I was supposed to have started, the job fell through. And that was really devastating for me, just career-wise and life direction-wise. And I realized I really don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where to go from here. And I went to college. I started taking classes to learn more about the radio industry and audio drama and just audio in general, podcasting, things like that. And really just found myself in a place where I didn't know if I really wanted to be a writer anymore. I had gotten to a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of the up and down and the fighting for all of this. Mm-hmm. And what really saved me was Abby, from Abby and Abby, and our podcast.
Okay. Oh, really? And she was a guest here on our podcast as well. So what happened with Abby that kind of brought you out of the pit?
It was just, I had asked her, do you want to do this podcast with me? Do you want to start Abby and Abby? And we had gotten a bit into the process, and it was just always in the back of my head. I can't disappoint Abby. I might not be happy where I am. I might not have any idea where I'm going, but I can't disappoint Abby. And that kept me going.
Sometimes you need that accountability.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes just one thing.
Right. You know, I saw you in May of last year, and I think you were at your lowest point just then. And I remember you saying to me, I'm 30 and I haven't been published. You have self-published, and beautifully so, but I think I've failed. And I remember that kind of went through me like, it was like it was happening to me because you know how much I believe in you and in your gift and in your talent. So didn't want that to happen. And not long after that, things began to turn around. Tell us what transpired.
Um, well, I mean, that whole time was quite the story. I actually have a tattoo now that is a reminder that
No way.
I do. It's on my arm. It's a reminder
As you were leaning back, I thought, are we going to see a leg right now? Okay, cool. What does your tattoo say?
Sorry, that was my arm. It says "not in but through" because God takes us through the valley of the shadow of death, not into the valley of the shadow of death. And through implies that there is something on the other side. And both of us, my husband was also changing careers at this point because he had lost his job like a week after I started college. So we were very in trouble. And we both went and got the tattoo, and then he got a job. That was amazing, and it was great. And then I was just finishing up college. I had a lead on a really good job. It was at Focus. It was for a podcast. I was going to be an assistant producer, and it was a new direction for my career. And I was hopeful that maybe this is it. And then I got a call from my boss, Marshall Younger, and he told me, I went to our department head and told him, we're going to lose her if you don't do something. And they opened up the job and hired me. And he was still on the phone, and I was like responding to him professionally, like, I'm so excited to work with you, while I'm like crying and like, you couldn't hear it, but I was like sobbing. And that was so exciting. And then to come into Focus right before one grand party happened where we had 6,000 listeners come to Focus to just celebrate Odyssey. And that was very exciting. And it hit home to me for the first time that I've had an impact on this show. These kids know who I am. I had kids come up to me and so excited, can I get your autograph? I love this show that you did. I love this one that you did. And it just kind of shocked me because I didn't realize that they knew who I was. And that was an incredible.
So you were there, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? You were Arnold Schwarzenegger to them, right? Yeah, right? Right. And there is just nothing like that feeling. So Abigail, what did you learn from all those disappointments and setbacks besides go through, not in, right? What have you learned from all of this?
Goodness. There was a lot of learning happening in those 9 months. It was a lot of trust. But it was also the learning that everything is part of the process. All of this is part of the building blocks that you build your career on. Failures, setbacks, things not happening the way you thought it would. It's not, oh, this is the end of the road. This is another step and another step and another step. And that's how you build a career. It's not all the fun stuff, which is people recognizing you and people reading your book and loving it. That's fun, but that's kind of the fluff. It's not the stuff that really builds your character and builds your writing ability. It's the stuff that's really hard, and it tests your commitment and it tests your ability to move forward. But if you can move through those times without giving up and without leaving everything that you had behind, then you'll end up with a career that has some substance to it.
And that is so wonderful and refreshing to hear you say that after our last conversation. So you have proven that those are super valuable lessons for any writer. Are you still writing fiction?
I am, yes. I am writing fiction in the corners. Being a working mom.
In the corners.
Yes, been one of the most overwhelming and wonderful and rewarding and difficult things that I have ever done. And so in my lunch breaks, in the half an hour before I go to bed, and just a little bit on the weekend, just where I can find a little bit of time, I sneak in some writing, and I'm working on my third book right now for the Spire and Stone, the Ghostwalker series, and that will come out in October, Lord willing.
That is amazing. And I feel a title coming on, Writing Fiction in the Corners. Can I have that, or have you already claimed it?
You can have it.
So, Abby, awesome. I love that. So let's go back to that big picture that you got in your head when you were scrubbing someone's floor. And by the way, do you still come to people's homes and scrub their floors? Because there could be work here for you. So let's go back to that big picture. No, you don't want to do that. That big picture dream is it hasn't all panned out exactly the way that you thought it would. How do you feel about that?
In some ways there have been parts of it that were like disappointing. I still want to see my books succeed more than they have. I had I had a promotion in the last like 4 days that has just been giving away ebook copies, and I had about 330 copies go out, which was very exciting for me. But
yeah,
it's not the the New York Times bestseller listing that I wanted, but it's good. And I think that's I think that I had to rework and reevaluate my dreams so that they weren't so specific, to leave room for what God was doing. And sometimes I think we set these unrealistic expectations of, these are exactly the things that I want, and that's how I'm going to make my debut into the writer's world, and we put this pressure on ourselves as like, this is the only way that we could be successful. But like if you're training to become a nurse, you don't go into a hospital and become the head nurse your first day working there. You have to build. You have to build to that. And everything is building. Every job that you work, every article you send out, every short story that you write, every novel that you write that doesn't get as much attention as you were hoping. Everything is building towards a dream that I think is wider and more varied than people think being a writer should be.
Yes. Absolutely. So, Abby, this is a delicate question. I've asked this to myself. Is self-publishing, does it feel like settling? Settling for something less than you?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think there will always be a little part of myself that's like, oh, I wish I could see this in like Barnes and Nobles. I wish this had a little more boost to it. But on the other hand, I'm allowed to make the decisions for my books. I don't have somebody standing over me telling me, actually, we don't like this. We don't want to go this direction. And I enjoy that freedom, because I very much in my work day, I have somebody telling me, nope, don't like that, go somewhere else. And it's like,
yeah,
I came up with this idea.
Right?
So there is
self-publishing, there's no boss.
Exactly.
There's no boss, right?
Yeah, there's this freedom of like, I am allowed to have my creative expression. And I enjoy that.
Exactly. I really like the fact that we're moving away from calling ourselves self-published authors. We are indie authors, independent authors. Somehow that gives it a different complexion. And I just released my first self-published book this week after years of being traditionally published. And I'm with you. The independence and the freedom far makes up for just having Zondervan or Thomas Nelson printed on the back of the book. Yeah. So I think really what we're hearing from you is that there's a huge difference between settling and walking through whatever relevant door opens for you, right?
Yeah.
So if someone had said, I can give you a scholarship to pharmacy school, that might have been settling because it had
Mhm.
nothing to do with what you really want to do.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing this is less than I expected, in some
Mhm.
ways, your story's been more than you could have
Yeah.
expected, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Abby, is there
Definitely.
anything else in that vast youthful wisdom that you have that I so respect? Is there anything else you want to share with your fellow Scribblies
I
about
think,
keeping on, keeping on?
yeah, I think it's that really careers are built over a lifetime. And I really believe, and God kind of pounded this into me over the last 10 years, is that if he was going to trust me with the big things, then I have to be trustworthy with the small things that he was asking me to do. I have to get up and
Oh,
write every day. I have to um, hit that word count, even though I don't want to. And I think that even if your career takes a different turn than you expected, that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's less than. I mean, I just came back from LA. I was directing a couple of my episodes, and I had an Oscar nominated actress who was in one of my script, and I was directing her, and then I had a Tony Award winning actor in a different script, and it was just like this moment of, what am I
oh,
doing here? How did I get here? And I remember my boss asked me if someone had asked you or had told you 12, 7 years ago that you were going to be directing an Oscar nominated actress, would you have believed them? And I told him absolutely not. I wouldn't have. I would not have believed them, because
we don't dare to dream that high, right?
I never dared to dream that I could get this far. And I think that God's dreams are always better. God's dreams are always better than what we had in mind, even if they're very different than what we had in mind.
They are delicious, and so are you. Abby, thank you so, so much for being here. If you want to get more acquainted with A.R. Geiger, then visit argeiger.com. Check out the blog, check out the podcast, which is going to be delightful. And most of all, read those books because she's a gift to us all. Again, Abby, thank you so much. And
Thank
for all
you.
of you, if you want a more personal kind of journey into this, definitely visit this week's blog post at nancybrew.com. And until next time, Scribblies, scribble on.